Awesome. Shows us live on Facebook and YouTube, so I'm just double checking. All right, great. So I'm almost done checking on things. If you guys can see us and hear us fine, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up and start commenting so I know who's tuned in and starting to hop onto the broadcast with us. I know we're a couple minutes behind. I take full blame and say it's the weather combined with my tech challenges from this morning. So humor us by giving us some compliments and comments along the way. And we'll go ahead and get started here momentarily. Great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. It is Friday, believe it or not. So happy Friday to everybody. I hope you guys are excited to start off a fantastic and relaxing weekend. I am Juliet Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And if this is your first time on this page, welcome to our Facebook and our YouTube channel, where we are streaming this both on our Westminster Chamber of Commerce platforms. Make sure that you hit the like button and hit the follow so you can get those timely alerts when we do go live. And of course, if you are returning back to us, thank you so much. I so appreciate you continuing to engage with us onto these broadcasts, sharing them out to your network, and letting folks know that there is information resources out there that they should be aware of. Now, at the very bottom of this broadcast, you should see a comment section. This is available to you to engage with us. Again, we enjoy those compliments, comments, any questions you might have on the content that is provided to us by our expert today. Type it into the chat section. If you're just wanting to give us a good morning message like Wayne has already done with Leadership Science Institute, then we'll take that as well. So thank you for hopping on with us, Wayne. I know our board chairman, Brian Dice, is on here. I also see Dave Carpenter. Happy Friday, Dave. Thank you guys for tuning into this broadcast. Again, make sure along the way that you comment or provide us any questions or additional dialogue into the comment section. I'll do my best to capture some of the information that's shared into the comments, but I always tell you to rewind, replay, and rewatch, because sometimes what I hear and what I start typing out frantically do not line up fully. So you all may have seen Laura Long. I want to say it was about 5-6 months ago, whenever a legislative session had taken a pause. We were getting back up and running during COVID. And Laura is one of our two amazing lobbyists that we have through the Jefferson County Business Lobby Group, and she gets stuff done at the state capitol. So I was so glad to have her come on here with us for a few minutes this morning to just share an update. Special session just took place last week for a few days, and Laura was busy, not at the Capitol, but virtually at the Capitol. And so we want to hear kind of everything from the business lens, get some questions that you guys might have lingering in your head answered. But again, engage with us along the way, and we're happy to take up those comments and questions. So good morning to everybody that's hopped onto the broadcast. Laura, I will mute myself, and the floor is yours to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Juliet. It's so nice to be here with your group again. I will just, I guess, start with a little bit of background on the special session. I think probably many of you may be aware that a few weeks ago, the governor introduced his proposed budget, and it had about $1.3 billion in stimulus and relief dollars. Part of what happened this year was that our revenue numbers came in much higher than expected, about $900 million over what we thought it was going to be. There were a couple of reasons for that. First, because of the federal enhanced unemployment, a lot of people who otherwise would have been really devastated financially still had money in their pocket to shop. And since we have an economy that's about 80% consumer spending, that really went a long way in bolstering the nation's economy and the state's economy. Also, you'll recall that income tax deadlines had been pushed back from April until July, so they had somewhat underestimated income tax revenues from the previous year, and there were just several things like that that kind of worked together, and the economy bounced back a little bit quicker than expected. So $900 million, how to spend it. The governor wanted to spend motor all that himself on stimulus. He did take a unilateral action to send the extra $375 to each person on the state's unemployment rolls. The legislature, obviously would prefer to have that spending authority themselves, which is traditionally their purview. They agreed to about $200 million of it, and so that is what led to the governor calling a special session. We also, believe that it's not likely, unfortunately, I think it's already too late, that Congress has not acted, and we don't think that they're going to act before early next year. So it was important to get some of these dollars out of the state coffers and into the hands where it could be used to the most effect. So under Colorado's Constitution, either the governor or a 2/3 majority of each chamber in the legislature can call the special session. The governor called a special session. Constitutionally, the session is limited to those specific topics or bills that are in the governor's call. So you may have heard a number of Republican bills that sounded like, pretty great ideas to the business community. Unfortunately, none of those are going to go anywhere. They were message bills. Many of them didn't fit under the call. And just because of the nature of the 3-day session, anything that wasn't fully vetted, stakeholdered, negotiated out, and degreased did not go forward. So about, I believe, 11 bills ended up passing, 9. Some of them not of interest really to the business community, but some important topics for us. One of the, so House Bill 1004 was for our restaurants and bars. Anybody who's been in those industries who are impacted by capacity restrictions and closures, they will be allowed to withhold the state sales tax portion on the first $70,000 of revenue for November, December, January, and February. So that $70,000 at the 2.9% state sales tax works out to about $2,000 a month. So $8,000 for those qualified businesses there should be a good boost to them, provided that they have any revenue. I know that there are a number of businesses in our communities that have not been able to make it work with the current closure capacity restrictions. So that's unfortunate. The other one, Senate Bill 1, established a $37 million grant program for similar types of businesses, restaurants, bars, breweries, also movie theaters, bars, gyms, and the like. So it's $37 million for the whole state. It will be sent out to the counties to be administered on the county level, mostly divided up on a basis of population, although there is extra money set aside for rural counties with small populations. It's going to be up to the county commissioners to decide how to get that money out. The bill does say that they have to notify all of the eligible businesses. They have to have at least a 3-week period for application, and they have to divide up the money fairly. So it's not going to be a first come, first serve. That means that, if there are 6,000 businesses in Jefferson County that are eligible for these $37 million, it's no one probably, I don't think, is going to get their full $7,000 that they might have been entitled to. It's a tiered program, so it's for businesses that had under $2.5 million of revenue last year and suffered a 20% drop in revenue in 2020 relative to 2019. And for those businesses at that level, at the $2.5 million revenue level, they would have been eligible for $7,000, and then it tiers down to about $3,500 for some of the smallest businesses. So we'll obviously, I'm sure Juliet We'll let you know as soon as we've got information from the counties, but the county really is going to be our first go-to. So good thing that we have good relationships with our Jeffco County commissioners. Another one of the business bills allowed local governments to limit the fees that meal delivery services, Grubhub and Uber Eats and those are allowed to charge restaurants. You may know that some of the fees amount to about 30% of the overall tab, and that comes out of the restaurant's end. So the restaurants have been very unhappy about that and complaining to state legislators for a while. We'll see which of the local governments are the first to act on that. There were a number of other bills. Childcare support, as you know, very low margin business and reduced capacity has put many childcare facilities in a very tenuous position financially. And childcare, you know, access to childcare was a problem even before the pandemic. So that's been top of mind for anybody who has kids at home, I'm very sure. So there's a grant program for childcare centers and hopefully an incubator to get some new folks up and running with some government assistance. There is housing and rental assistance, broadband access for kids going to school online, food bank assistance, utility assistance, and a couple of others. So that was the big 8 or so, and we were in and out in 3 days. It was, you know, adrenaline's my favorite or second favorite drug. So it was a busy, exciting couple of days. We went until about 10 p.m. Monday and Tuesday night, and then they were able to wrap up around midday on Wednesday. So I don't know, Juliet, should we have some questions?
So I do have to ask you before people think that, you know, you are like on this like spree of drugs. Like, what is your first drug, Laura?
Well, I represent the Colorado Brewers Guild, so I'm contractually obligated to say beer.
Yes. And we've had them. Thank you for that connection. A while back, we did have them and the Colorado Hoteliers and Lodgers Association both on our broadcast. So for those of you that had not watched that, I encourage you to go back to that broadcast and tune in. They shared a wealth of information about what they do in Colorado and facts that I had no idea impacted not only our economy and our nation. So that was an incredible broadcast. For those of you that are just now hopping on with us, we have Laura Long. She is with Weiss Capital Group, one of our 2 amazing lobbyists that get things done at the state capitol. Laura has given us a quick overview of the 8 bills that really passed over the special session that took place last week, which is 3 days long. If you had tuned in last week, we had Adam Berg, and I know Adam's tuned in to this broadcast. He represents our ADCO Legislative Affairs. Adam gave a nice overview of why we had the special session when we did, some things to expect and changes that took place after election and moving forward in leadership capacities and things. So Laura is really here to dive down into some of those specific bills that she mentioned earlier on. So Laura, I want to ask you a couple of things. I don't see any questions right off the top of my head, but you know me and I like to dissect stuff. The first being, if you can expand a little bit on this Grubhub idea, this cap that's there, and it sounds like local municipalities can choose to implement that, or they cannot.
That is correct. It requires affirmative action on the part of the local licensing authority. And honestly, we didn't have any clients that were watching that, so I don't have all of the details right at the tip of my tongue. But yes, it would require, say, Westminster City Council to affirmatively limit the percentage of the fee that the Grubhub could charge to that restaurant.
Okay, and then I know that you worked very closely on the utility assistance component that was there, and that was a huge success for you to have gotten passed. Can you go in a little bit more detail on how that impacts certain parts of our community and who would benefit from this newly approved program that came through?
Sure. So the bill set aside an additional $5 million for low-income utility assistance. The state currently does not have funding mechanism for this. We're unique among states. We used to be funded out of severance tax, oil and gas severance tax, and fund stream, and has been dwindling over the last several years. So at one point, there were about $13 million a year that went to Governor's office for weatherization, to LEAP, which is the federal program you're probably already aware of, that's administered through the counties, and then Energy Outreach Colorado, which is a statutorily created nonprofit that fills in the gaps where LEAP doesn't work. So because of all of the layoffs, people underemployed or completely unemployed, there's been a huge rise in Jefferson County, over 1,000% increase in utility bills and arrears. And we know that the inability to pay utilities is one of the leading causes of homelessness. So we really want to keep people in their homes throughout this cold winter, if we can do so. The governor was originally considering a moratorium. There policy voices who don't believe that's a good idea, because people who could pay their bills end up not paying their bills because they know that there's no concern that they might get shut off. And then by the time the moratorium is lifted, then now they've got these arrears of sometimes thousands of dollars that they can't possibly pay, and it just compounds the problem. Also, utility bad debt goes into their rate base, and we all end up paying it. So it's better to just take care of it on the front end. It helps those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to continue to pay our own utility bills by lowering our bills in the long run, and helping those people who are in immediate need. So there is an income qualification that's going to go through the same program that is already existing. And there are a number of faith-based organizations and community organizations where folks who need help can reach out and enter the portal and get into the system, and then get the utilities assistance, and oftentimes, if appropriate, hooked up with other forms of assistance like food banks and other things that might be in our communities to protect our most vulnerable neighbors.
Yes, and I know that both the food banks and all the food services that we've had during this time that are to support those in need have definitely gone utilized. So that was really nice to see this come through. We have a question that came from Dave Carpenter, Laura, and I'm pulling it up. And while I'm pulling it up, so you can have a second to read it, is lengthy, so I'll leave it on here enough that we read the question and give you a second to think about answering, and then I'll pull it off. So Dave is asking, this relates to the cap that we briefly discussed. And this is the new law that would allow for municipalities to cap certain fees on those delivery services. He mentions that Denver had a cap prior to special session. And so why was there a need if a local municipality already had implemented that? And then to follow up on that, how does that capping fee actually fit in with what the governor had stated as the rationale for special session? I know it's a pretty long-winded question that Dave had, but I think he mainly wanted to try and get some clarity on those 2 points. So if we can do our best in answering them for him, that would be terrific.
Wow. Wish I could phone a friend. Is there anybody else on the call that knows all of this stuff? I would say that it was specifically in the governor's call. I'll answer the last one first, because that's the easiest. For help for food and drinking establishments that have been impacted negatively by these closures. And so, I think that this does fit into that. Let's see. One of the aspects of the bill was that it restricted the ability of those third-party delivery services to reduce the compensation rate for their employees, I guess they're not employees, but the gig workers who actually do the deliveries. All of those fees, I think, go directly to the company anyway. They're not part of the compensation for the delivery drivers. So, but they're saying the bill stipulated that those third-party delivery places could not then reduce the tips that might have been given to those drivers. It also required that the third-party delivery place disclose the fee that they're charging to the restaurant to customers, and there are a number of things in there. Like I said, I wasn't involved in that bill, so I'd be happy to do some homework and follow up with you later, Juliet, if people need information on that.
Yes, and so for those, that's actually a perfect transition, because for those of you that are hopping on and you may be watching this at a later point in time, give us a hashtag replay, or if you think of something that's pretty detailed in any of the bills that Laura has provided an overview on, please type them into the comment section. We do end up getting sometimes questions that we want to answer in a little bit more of a thorough capacity, and so we'll come back to you with those specific answers and place them into the comments of this broadcast that's there. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And I know, Dave, you had a couple of great questions. I know Laura touched on at least one and a half of those. And so we can get back to you on some of the details as to the Denver scenario and why that was a little bit different from this state, because that seems to factor in something else. So Laura, with that being said, can we transition into what does next year look like? Do you have any idea as to some of the issues that might be taken up or in areas of interest by these legislatures when session reconvenes, if it does, around that January 13th time period? I just want to give a quick shout out to Councillor Seymour for hopping onto this broadcast with us.
Yeah, so, that's sort of an open question, Juliet. We'll gavel in on the second Wednesday per the Constitution, but it's unclear right now whether they'll gavel immediately back out, or they will do a fully virtual session like they just did for the special session, and as they did in May and June for the second half of the regular session. I was just on the phone with the governor's office last night and asked that very question: what do we see coming? I think that it's likely that they will take a run at public option or some kind of cost-saving measure for health insurance that will come out of the governor's so-called Office of Saving People Money. As far as, employers have been hit with a number of new employment-related mandates over the last few years. The Equal Pay Bill, the family and medical leave thing that was on the ballot this past November. Many different mandates on employers. There's a long, long list. So we're always, very anxious to see what might be coming down the pike. And right now, the governor's office says, and I believe them, that they're not really hearing anything specific. I believe that probably most of the session will be taken up with questions of revenue, with the ballot measure that passed in November, reducing state income tax. They're going to have several $100 million there that they're going to try to make up. And because of Tabor, the only thing that they can really do at this point is take away our tax credits. So if you have particular tax credits that your business relies on, enterprise zone tax credits, other things of that nature, keep an eye on it this session, because we think that will probably be the place that they go to raise revenue, because it's the only place that they can go to raise revenue. Transportation is always a big question for us, especially, those of us in the metro counties that have long commutes and are tired of driving on terrible roads that are too crowded. It's an open question how they can solve that problem. It's unlikely that they'll come up with a huge chunk of money out of the general fund, particularly when K-12 funding is down so much. So maybe a fee bill or something like that. It will probably require some significant Republican buy-in to go anywhere. Because without it, there just isn't the political will. I think the Democrats would largely prefer to fund education over transportation. You should walk or ride your bike.
Well, a lot that we can all digest on. Thank you so much, Laura, for being on here with us. And for those of you that have tuned into the broadcast, I so appreciate you spending some of your morning with us. Please make sure that you do share this out to your network so others can be updated on what is transpiring. And of course, if you have any questions that you did not get a chance to ask us, feel free to type it into the comment section or DM us at a later point in time, and we will get that answer for you. Laura, I appreciate all that you do for us at the state capitol. I know it's not an easy task, especially transitioning from what we're everyday used to, I guess, as it relates to the legislature, if you can say that you're used to something from one session to the next. But it has been a transition. I know that you guys are doing your part in making sure that you're voicing our community needs and the overall voice for businesses. So I appreciate all you do for us. Thank you so much for being on here this morning with me.
Thank you, Juliet.